with that, we start up a half-hour early edition of the show, and we slowly bring up the camera and welcome everyone to a Sunday night edition of Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. And tonight, they are the final 3 chapters of the very well written, but you can't expect anything else from Samuel Clemens, aka Mark Twain, The Mysterious Stranger. We are closing up the long 3 chapters, and this has been a long book, longer than I expected for only 11 chapters. And as I mentioned in the past, this book was not finished. At the end of the show tonight, at the end of the chapters, I'm going to talk about the book. And as you know, this is a book that is technically banned because of a certain character in it. And after 9 chapters, 8 chapters, we all know who that old chap is. And I think we need to get rolling on it because, like I said, these are long last 3 chapters. And let's get started with, by the way, before I forget, when you get a chance, please like and subscribe. It helps out the algorithm here on YouTube and here on Twitch. Just go to the little thumbs up, yay, and hit the notification bell so you know when each episode arrives. And for that, we need to get going on this book. And we are going to be finishing up The Mysterious Stranger, Mark Twain. Chapter 9. It was a wonderful, the mastery Satan had over time and distance. For him, they did not exist. He called them human inventions and said they were artificialities. We often went to the most distant parts of the globe with him and stayed weeks and months and yet were gone only a fraction of a second as a rule. You could prove it by the clock. One day when our people were in awful distress because the witch commission were afraid to proceed against the astrologer and Father Peter's household, or against any indeed, but the poor and the friendless, they lost patience and took the witch hunting on their own score and began to chase a born lady who was known to have the habit of curing people by devilish arts, such as bathing them, washing them, and nourishing them, instead of bleeding them and purging them through the ministrations of a barber surgeon in the proper way. She came flying down with the howling and the cursing mob after her, and tried to take refuge in the houses, but the doors were shut in her face. They chased her more than half an hour. We followed to see it, and at last she was exhausted and fell, and they caught her. They dragged her to a tree, threw a rope over the limb, and began to make a noose in it, some holding her meantime as she was crying and begging, and her young daughter looking on and weeping but afraid to say or do anything. They hanged the lady, and I threw a stone at her, although in my heart I was sorry for her. But all were throwing stones, and each was watching his neighbor, and if I had not done as the others did, it would have been noticed and spoken of. Satan burst out laughing. All that were near by turned upon him, astonished and not pleased. It was an ill time to laugh, for his free and scoffing ways and his supernatural music had brought him under suspicion all over the town, and turned many privately against him. The big blacksmith called attention to him now, raising his voice so that all should hear, and said, "What are you laughing at? Answer! Moreover, please explain to the company why you threw no stone." "Are you sure I did not throw a stone?" "Yes, You needn't try to get out of it. I had my eye on you. And I noticed you, shouted two others. Three witnesses, Satan said. Mueller the blacksmith, Klein the butcher man, Pfeiffer the weaver's journeyman. Three very ordinary liars. Are there any more? Never mind whether they are theirs or not, and never mind about what you consider us. Three is enough to settle your matter for you. You'll prove that you threw a stone, or it shall go hard with you. That's so, shouted the crowd, and surged up as closely as they could to the center of interest. And first you will answer that other question, cried the blacksmith, pleased with himself for being the mouthpiece of the public and hero of the occasion. What are you laughing at? Satan smiled and answered pleasantly, to see these cowards stoning a dying woman when they were so near death themselves. You could see the superstitious crowds shrink and catch their breath under the sudden shock. The blacksmith, with a show of bravado, said, Pooh, what do you know about it? I? Everything. By profession, I am a fortune teller, and I read the hands of you three, and some others, and when you lifted them to stone the woman, one of you will die tomorrow week. Another you will die tonight. The third has but 5 minutes to live, and yonder is the clock. It made a sensation. The faces of the crowd blanched, turned mechanically towards the clock. The butcher and the weaver seemed smitten with an illness, but the blacksmith braced up and said with a spirit, It is not long to wait for the prediction number one. If it fails, young master, you will not live a whole minute after. I promise you that. No one said anything. All watched the clock in a deep stillness, which was impressive. When 4.5 minutes were gone, the blacksmith gave a sudden gasp and clapped his hands upon his heart, saying, Give me breath, give me room, and began to sink down. The crowd surged back, no one offering to support him, and he fell lumbering to the ground and was dead. The people stared at him, and then at Satan, then at one another, and their lips moved, but no words came. Then Satan said, Three saw that I threw no stone. Perhaps there are others. Let them speak. It struck a kind of panic into them, and although no one answered him, many began to violently accuse one another, saying, You said he didn't throw, and getting for a reply, It is a lie. I will make you eat it. And so in a moment there was a raging and noisy turmoil, and beating and banging one another, and in the midst was the only indifferent one, the dead lady hanging from her rope, her troubles forgotten, her spirit at peace. So we walked away, and I was not at ease, but was saying to myself, He told them he was laughing at them, but it was a lie. He was laughing at me. That made him laugh again and said, Yes, I was laughing at you, because in fear of what others might report about you, you stoned the woman when your heart revolted at the act, but I was laughing at the others too. Why? Because their case was yours. How is that? Well, there were 68 people there, and 62 of them had no more desire to throw a stone than you had. Satan. It is true. I know your race. It is made up of sheep. It is governed by minorities, seldom or never by majorities. It suppresses its feelings and its beliefs and follows the handful that makes the most noise. Sometimes the noisy handful is right, sometimes wrong, but no matter, the crowd follows it. The vast majority of the race, whether savage or civilized, are secretly kind-hearted and shrink from inflicting pain, but in the presence of the aggressive and pitiless minority, they don't care to assert themselves. Think of it. One kind-hearted creature spies upon another and sees to it that he loyally helps in iniquities which revolt both of them. Speaking as an expert, I know that 99 out of 100 of your race were strongly against the killing of witches when that foolishness was first agitated by a handful of pious lunatics in a long ago. And I know that even today, after ages of transmitted prejudice and silly teachings, only one person in 20 puts any real heart into the harrying of a witch. And yet, apparently, everybody hates witches and wants them killed. Someday, a handful will rise up on the other side and make a most noise. Perhaps even a single daring man with a big voice and a determined front will do it. And in a week, all the sheep will wheel and follow him, and witch hunting will come to a sudden end. Monarchies, aristocracies, and religions all are based upon the large defect in your race, the individual's distrust of his neighbor, and his desire for safety's or comfort's sake to stand well in the neighbor's eye. These institutions will always remain and always flourish and always oppress you, affront you, and degrade you, because you will always be and remain slaves of minorities. There was never a country where the majority of the people were in their secret hearts loyal to any of these institutions. I did not like to hear our race called sheep, and said I did not think we were. Still, it is true, lamb, said Satan. Look at you in war. What mutton are you? And how ridiculous. In war, how? There has never been a just one, never an honorable one, on the part of the instigator of the war. I can see a million years ahead, and this rule will never change in so many half dozen instances. The loud little handful, as usual, will shout for war. The pulpit will warily and cautiously object at first. The great, big, dull bulk of the nation will rub their sleepy eyes and try to make out why there is such war, and will say earnestly and indignantly, "It is unjust and dishonorable, and there is no necessity for it." Then the handful will shout louder. A few fair men on the other side will argue and reason against the war with speech and pen, and will at first have a hearing and be applauded, but it will not last long. Those others will outshout them, and presently the anti-war audiences will thin out and lose popularity. Before long, you will see this curious thing, the speakers stoned from the platform, and free speech strangled by hordes of furious men who in their secret hearts are still at one with those stoned speakers. As earlier, but do not say so. And now, the whole nation, pulpit and all, will take up the war cry and shout itself hoarse, and mob any honest man who ventures to open his mouth. And presently such mouths will cease to open. Next, the statesman will invent cheap lies, putting the blame upon the nation that is attacked, and every man will be glad of those conscious soothing fallacies, and will diligently study them and refuse to examine any refutations of them, and thus he will buy him and convince himself that the war is just, and will thank God for the better sleep he enjoys after this process of grotesque self-deception. Chapter 10. Days and days went by now, and no Satan. It was dull without him, but the astrologer, who had returned from his excursions to the moon, went about the village, braving public opinion and getting a stone in the middle of his back now and then, when some witch hater got a safe chance at it to throw it, and dodged out of sight. Meantime, two influences had been working well for Margaret. That Satan, who was quite indifferent to her, had stopped going to her house after a visit or two, had hurt her pride, and she had set herself the task of banishing him from her heart. Reports of Wilhelm meddling dissipation from her from time to time by old Ursula had touched her with remorse, jealousy of Satan because of the cause of it. And so now these two matters working upon her together. She was getting a good profit out of the combination. Her interest in Satan was steadily cooling, her interest in Wilhelm steadily warming. All that was needed to complete her conversation was that Wilhelm should brace up and do something that should cause favorable talk and incline the public towards him again. The opportunity came now. Margaret sent and asked him to defend her uncle in the approaching trial, and he was greatly pleased and stopped drinking and began his preparations with diligence. With more diligence than hope, in fact, for it was not a promising case. He had many interviews in his office with Seppi and me, and threshed out our testimony pretty thoroughly, thinking to find some valuable grains among the chaff, but the harvest was poor, of course. Satan had only come. That was my constant thought. He could invent some way to win the case, for he had said it would be won. So he necessarily knew how it would be done. But the days dragged on, and still he had not come. Of course, I did not doubt that he would be won, and that Father Peter would be happy for the rest of his life, since Satan had said so. Yet I knew I should be much more comfortable if he would come and tell us how to manage it. It was getting high time for Father Peter to have a saving change towards happiness, for by general report he was worn out with his imprisonment and the ignominy that was burdening him, and was like to die of his miseries unless he got relief soon. At last the trial at last the trial came on, and the people gathered from all around to witness it, among them many strangers from considerable distances. Yes, everybody was there except the accused. He was too feeble in body for the strain. Hang on a second, guys. Big fat fingers hit something. But Margaret was present and kept keeping up her hope and her spirit the best she could. The money was present too. It was emptied onto the table and was handled and caressed and examined by such as were privileged. The astrologer was put in the witness box. He had on his best hat and robe for the occasion. Question: you claim that this money is yours. Answer: I do. How did you come by it? I found the bag in the road when I was returning from a journey. When? More than 2 years ago. What did you do with it? I brought it home, hid it in a secret place in my observatory, intending to find the owner if I ever could. You endeavored to find him. I made diligent inquiry during several months, but nothing came of it. And then? I thought it not worth the while to look further, and was minded to use the money in finishing the wing of my foundling asylum connected with the priory and nunnery. So I took it out of its hiding place and counted it to see if any of it was missing. And then? Why do you stop? Proceed. I'm sorry I have to say this, but just as I had finished and I was restoring the bag to its place, I looked up and there stood Father Peter behind me. Several murmured. That looks bad, the others answered. Ah, but he is such a liar. That made you uneasy. No, I thought nothing of it at the time, for Father Peter often came to me unannounced to ask me for a little help in his need. Margaret blushed crimson at hearing her uncle falsely and impudently charged with begging, especially from one he had always denounced as a fraud, and was going to speak, but remembered herself in time and held her peace. Proceed. In the end, I was afraid to contribute the money to the foundling asylum, but elected to wait another year and continue my inquiries. When I heard of Father Peter's find, I was glad, and no suspicion entered my mind. Then I came home a day or two later and discovered that my own money had gone. I had still did not suspect until three circumstances connected with Father Peter's good fortune struck me as being singularly coincidence. Pray name them. Father Peter had found his money on a path. I had found mine on the road. Father Peter's find consisted exclusively of gold ducats. Mine also. Father Peter found 1,107 ducats, exactly the same. This closed his evidence, and certainly made a strong impression on the house. One could see that. Wilhelm Medling, asked him some questions, and then called us boys, and we told our tale. It made the people laugh, and we were ashamed. We were feeling pretty badly, however, anyway, because Wilhelm was hopeless and showed it. He was doing as well as he could, poor young fellow, but nothing was in his favor, and such sympathy as there was now plainly did not go with his client. It might be difficult for court and people to believe the astrologer's story, considering his character, but it was almost impossible to believe Father Peter's. We were already feeling bad enough, but when the astrologer's lawyer said he believed he could not ask us any questions, for our story was a little delicate and would be cruel for him to put any strain upon it, everybody tittered, and it was almost more than we could bear. Then he made a sarcastic little speech and got so much fun out of our tale, and it seemed so ridiculous and childish and every way impossible and foolish, that it made everybody laugh until tears came, and at last Margaret could not keep up her courage any longer, but broke down and cried, and I was so sorry for her. Now I noticed something that embraced me up. It was Satan standing alongside of Wilhelm, and there was such a contrast. Satan looked so confident, had such a spirit in his eyes and face, and Wilhelm looked so depressed and despondent. We too were comfortable now, and judged that he would testify and persuade the bench, and the people that black and white and black, or any color wanted to see it. We glanced around to see what the strangers in the house thought of him, for he was beautiful, stunning, in fact, but no one was noticing him, so we knew that he was invisible. The lawyer was saying his last words, and while he was saying them, Satan began to melt into Wilhelm. He melted into him and disappeared. And there was a change when his spirit began to look out of Wilhelm's eyes. That lawyer finished quite seriously and with dignity. He pointed out the money and said, "The love of it is the root of all evil. There it lies, the ancient tempter, newly red with the shame of the latest victory, the dishonor of a priest of God and his two poor juvenile helpers in crime. But it could not, but it could speak, but if it could speak, let us hope that it would be constrained to confess that of all its conquests, that this was the basest and most pathetic. He sat down. Wilhelm rose and said, "From the testimony of the accuser, I gather that he found this money on the road more than 2 years ago. Correct me, sir, if I misunderstood you." The astrologer said his understanding of it was correct, and the money was and the money so found has never been out of the hands there thenceforth upon the certain definite date, the last day of last year. Correct me, sir, if I am wrong. The astrologer nodded his head. Wilhelm turned to the bench and said, "If I prove that this money here was not that money, then it is not his." "Certainly not. But this is irregular. If you had such a witness, it is your duty to give proper notice of it, and have him here too." He broke off and began to consult with other judges. Meantime, that other lawyer got up excited and began to protest against allowing new witnesses to be brought into this case at this late stage. The judges decided that his contention was just and must be allowed. "But this is not a new witness," said Wilhelm. "He has already been partly examined. I speak of the coin." "The coin? What can the coin say?" "It can say it is not the coin that the astrologer once possessed. It can say that it is not in existence last December. By its date, it can say this." And it was so. There was the greatest excitement in the court while the lawyer and the judges were reaching for coins and examining them and exclaiming. And everybody was full of admiration of Wilhelm's brightness in happening to think of that neat idea. At last order was called, and the court said, "All the coins but 4 are of the date of the present year. The court tenders its sincere sympathy to the accused, and its deep regret that he, an innocent man, through an unfortunate mistake, has suffered the undeserved humiliation of imprisonment and trial. The case is dismissed." So the money could speak after all, though the lawyer through it couldn't, and the court rose, and almost everybody came forward to shake the hands with Margaret and congratulate her, and then to shake with Wilhelm and praise him, and Satan stepped out of Wilhelm, and the standing around looked on with full interest, and people walking through him every which way, not knowing he was there. And Wilhelm could not explain why he only thought of the date of the coins at the last moment, instead of earlier. He said it just occurred to him all of a sudden, like inspiration, and he brought it right out without any hesitation, for although he didn't examine the coins, he seemed somehow to know it was true. That was honest of him, and like him, another would have pretended he had thought of it earlier and was keeping it back for a surprise. He had dulled down a little now. Not much, but still you could notice that he hadn't had the luminous look in his eyes that he had while Satan was in him. He nearly got it back, though, for a moment when Margaret came and praised him and thanked him and couldn't keep him from seeing how proud she was of him. The astrologer went off dissatisfied and cursing, and Solomon Isaacs gathered up the money and carried it away. It was Father Peter's for good and all now. Satan had gone. I judged that he had spirited himself away to the jail to tell the prisoner of the news, and in this I was right. Margaret and the rest of us hurried hither at our best speed, and in a great state of rejoicing. Well, what Satan had done was this. He had appeared before the poor prisoner, exclaiming, "The trial is over, and you stand forever disgraced as a thief by verdict of the court." The that the shook unseated the old man's reasoning. And when we arrived 10 minutes later, he was parading pompously up and down and delivering commands to this and that and the other constable or jailer, and calling them Grand Chamberlain and Prince this and Prince that, and Admiral of the Fleet, Field Marshal in command, and all such few station, and was happy as a bird. He thought he was emperor. Margaret flung herself on his breast and cried, and indeed everybody was moved almost to heartbreak. He recognized Margaret, but he could not understand why should cry. He patted her on the shoulder and said, "Don't do it, dear. Remember there are witnesses, and this is becoming the crown prince. Tell me your troubles. It shall be mended. There is nothing in the emperor cannot do." Then he looked around and saw old Ursula with her apron to her eyes, and was puzzled at that, and said, "And what is the matter with you?" Through her sobs, she got out the words explaining that she was distressed to see him so. He reflected over the moment, and then muttered to himself, "A singular old thing, the Dowager Duchess means well, but it's always snuffling, and never able to tell what it was about. It is because she doesn't know." His eyes fell on Wilhelm. "Prince of India," he said, "I divine that it is you that the crown princess is concerned about. Her tears shall be dried. I will no longer stand between you. She shall share your throne, and between you shall inherit mine. There, little lady, have I done well? You can smile now. Isn't it so?" He petted Margaret and kissed her, and was so contented with himself and with everybody that he could not do enough for all of us, but begged to give away kingdoms and such things right and left, and the least of any of us got was a principality. And so, at the last, being persuaded to go home, he marched in imposing state, and when the crowds along the way saw how it gratified him to be hurried at, they humored him to the top of his desire, and he responded with condescending bows and gracious smiles, and often stretched out his hand and said, "Bless you, my people." As pitiful a sight as it I ever saw, and Margaret and old Ursula crying all the way. On my road home, I came upon Satan, and he reproached me with deceiving me with that lie. He was not embarrassed, but he said quite simply and composedly, "Ah, you mistake it. You mistake. It was the truth. I said he would be happy the rest of his days, and he will, for he will always think he is an emperor, and in his pride in it, and his joy will endure to the end. He is now and will remain one utterly happy person in this empire." "But the method of it, Satan, the method. Couldn't you have done it without depriving him of his reason?" It was difficult to irritate Satan, but that accomplished it. "What an ass you are," he said. "Are you so unobservant as not to have found out that sanity and happiness are an impossible combination? No sane man can be happy, for to him life is real, and he sees what fearful thing it is. Only the mad can be happy, and not many of those. The few of those imagining themselves kings or gods are happy. The rest are not happier than the sane. Of course, no man is entirely in his right mind at any time, but I have been referring to the extreme cases. I have taken from this man that trumpery thing which the races regard as the mind. I have replaced his tin life with a silver glit fiction, and you can see the result, and you criticize. I said I would make him permanently happy, and I have done it. I have only made him happy by the only means possible to his race, and you are not satisfied? He heaved a discouraged sigh and said, It seems to me that this race is harder to please. It is, there it is, you see. He didn't seem to know any way to do a person a favor except by killing him or making a lunatic out of him. I apologized as well as I could, but privately I could not think much of his process at that time. Satan was accustomed to say that our race lived a life of continuous and uninterrupted self-deception. It duped itself, from cradle to grave, with shams and delusions which it mistook for realities, and this made its entire life a sham. Of the score of fine qualities which it imagined it had, and was vain of, it really possessed hardly one. It regarded itself as gold, and was only brass. One day when he was in this vein, he mentioned a detail, a sense of humor. I cheered up then, and took issue. I said we possess it. There spoke the race, he said, always ready to claim what it hasn't got, and mistake its ounce of brass filings for a ton of gold dust. You have a mongrel perception of humor, nothing more. A multitude of you possess that. This multitude sees how comic side of the thousand low-grade and trivial things, broad intricacies, mainly, grotesqueries, absurdities, evokers of the horse laugh. The 10,000 high-grade comicalities which exist in the world are sealed from their dull vision. Will a day come when the race will detect the funniness of these juveniles and laugh at them, and by laughing at them destroy them? For your race in its poverty has unquestionably one real effective weapon: laughter. Power, money, persuasion, supplication, persecution, these can lift at a colossal humbug, push it a little, weaken it a little, century by century, but only laughter can blow it to rags and atoms at a blast. Against the assault of laughter, nothing can stand. You are always fussing and fighting with your other weapons. Do you ever use that one? No. No, you leave it lying rusting. As a race, do you ever use it at all? No. You lack sense and the courage. We were traveling at a time and stopped at a little city in India and looked on while a juggler did his tricks before a group of natives. They were wonderful, but I knew Satan could beat that game, and I begged him to show off a little, and he said he would. He changed himself into a native in turban and breechcloth, and very comfortably conferred in me a temporary knowledge of the language. The juggler exhibited a seed exhibited a seed, covered it with earth in a small flower pot, then put a rag over the pot. After a minute, the rag began to rise. 10 minutes in, it had risen a foot. Then the rag was exposed, and a little tree was exposed, with leaves upon it and ripe fruit. We ate the fruit, and it was good. But Satan said, Why did you cover the pot? Can't you grow the tree in sunlight? No, said the juggler, no one can do that. You are only an apprentice. You do not know your trade. Give me the seed, and I will show you. He took the seed and said, What shall I raise from it? It is a cherry seed. Of course you will raise a cherry. Oh no, that is a trifle. Any novice can do that. Shall I raise an orange tree from it? Oh yes. And the juggler laughed. And shall I make it bear other fruits as well as oranges? If God wills. and they all laughed. Satan put the seed in the ground and put a handful of dust on it, and said, "Rise." A tiny stem shot up and began to grow, and it grew so fast that in 5 minutes there was a great tree, and we were sitting in the shade of it, and there was a murmur of wonder. Then all looked up and saw the strange and pretty sight, for there were branches were heavy with fruits of many kinds and colors: oranges, grapes, bananas, peaches, cherries, apricots, and so on. Baskets were brought, and the unlading of the tree began, and people crowded around Satan and kissed his hand and praised him, calling him the Prince of Jugglers. The news went about the town, and everyone came running to see the wonder, and they remembered to bring the baskets too. But the tree was equal to the occasion. It put out new fruits as fast as any were removed. Baskets were filled by always. The supply remained undiminished. At last a foreigner in a white linen and sun helmet arrived and exclaimed angrily, "Away from here! Clear out, you dogs! The tree is on my lands, and this is my property." The natives put down their baskets and made humble obeisance. Satan made humble obeisance too, and with his fingers to his forehead in the native way, and said, "Please let them have their pleasure for an hour, sir. Only that and no more. Afterward you may forbid them, and you will still have more fruit than you and the other state can consume in a year." This made the foreigner very angry, and he cried out, "Who are you, you vagabond, to tell your betters what they may do and what they mayn't?" And he struck Satan with the end of his cane and followed this error with a kick. The fruits rotted on the branches, and the leaves withered and fell. The foreigner gazed at the bare limbs with the look of one who was surprised and not gratified. Satan said, "Take good care of the tree, for its health and yours are bound together. It will never bear fruit again, but if you tend to it, it will live long. Water its roots once in each hour every night, and do it yourself. This must not be done by proxy, and to do it in daylight will not answer. If you fail only once in any night, the tree will die, and you likewise. If you fail only once in any night, do not go home to your own country any more. You would not reach there. Make no business or pleasure engagements which require you to go outside your gate at night. You cannot afford the risk. Do not rent or sell this place. It would be injudicious. Big word, guys, sorry. The foreigner was proud and wouldn't beg, but I thought he looked as if he would like to. While he stood gazing at Satan, we vanished away and landed in Ceylon. I was sorry for that man, sorry Satan hadn't been his customary self and killed him or made him a lunatic. It would have been a mercy. Satan overheard the thought and said, "I would have done it, but for his wife who had not offended me. She is coming to him presently from their native land, Portugal. She is well, but has not long to live, and has been yearning to see him and persuade him to go back with her next year. She will die without knowing. He cannot leave the place." He won't tell her. He will not trust that secret with anyone. He will reflect that it could be revealed in sleep, in some hearing of some Portuguese guest servant, in some time or another. Did none of those natives understand what you said to them? None of them understood, but he will always be afraid that some of them did. That fear will torture him, for he has been a harsh master to them. In his dreams, he will imagine them chopping his tree down. That will make his days uncomfortable, and I have already arranged for his nights. It grieved me, though not sharply, to see him take such a malicious satisfaction in his plans for this foreigner. Does he believe what you told him? He thought he didn't, but our vanishing helped. The tree where he had been had no tree before. That helped. The insane and uncanny variety of fruits, the sudden withering, all of these are helps. Let him think as he may, reason as he may, one thing is certain. He will water the tree. But between this and night, he will begin his changed career with a very natural precaution for him. What is that? He will fetch a priest to cast out the tree's devil. You are such a humorous race, and don't suspect it. Will he tell the priest? No, he will say a juggler from Bombay created it, and that he wants the juggler's devil driven out of it, so that it will thrive and be fruitful again. The priest's incantations will fail. Then the Portuguese will give up that scheme and get his watering pot ready. But the priest will burn the tree, I know it. He will not allow it to remain. Yes, and anywhere in Europe he would burn the man too. But in India the people are civilized, and these things will not happen. The man will drive the priest away and take care of the tree. I reflected a little then, and said, Satan, you have given him a hard life, I think. Comparatively. It must not be mistaken for a holiday. We flitted from place to place around the world as we had done before, Satan showing me 100 wonders, most of them reflecting in some way the weakness and triviality of our race. He did this now every few days, not out of malice, I am sure of that. It only seemed to amuse and interest him, just as a naturalist might be amused and interested by a collection of ants. The final chapter, chapter 11. Take a sip if I may, guys. For as much as a year, Satan continued these visits, but at last he came less often, and then for a long time he did not come at all. This always made me lonely and melancholy. I felt he was losing interest in our tiny world, and might at any time abandon his visits entirely. When one day he finally came to me, I was overjoyed, but only for a little while. He had come to say goodbye, and told me, and for the last time. He had investigations and undertakings in other corners of the universe, he said, and it would keep him busy for a longer period than I could wait for his return. And you are going away and will not come back anymore? Yes, he said. We have comrades along the way, and it has been pleasant for both, but I must go now, and we shall not see each other any more. In this life, Satan, but in another? Shall we meet in another surely? Then all tranquility and soberly he made the strange answer. There is no other. The subtle influence blew upon my spirit from his, bringing with it a vague, dim, but blessed and hopeful feeling that the incredible words might be true. Even must be true? Have you never suspected this, Theodore? No. How could I? But if it can only be true, it is true. A gust of thankfulness rose in my breast, but a doubt checked it before I could issue the words, and I said, but we have seen the future life, so it is in its actuality, and so. It was a vision, It had no existence. I could hardly breathe for a great hope that was struggling in me. A vision. A vision. Life itself is only a vision, a dream. It was electrical. My God, I had had the very thought 1,000 times in my musing. Nothing exists, it's all a dream. God, man, the world, the sun, the moon, the wilderness of the stars, the dream, all a dream. They all have no existence. Existing, nothing exists save empty space and you. I? You are not you. You have no body, no blood, no bones. You are but a thought. I myself have no existence. I am but a dream, your dream, creature of your imagination. In a moment you will have realized this. Then you will banish me from your visions, and I will dissolve into nothingness, out of which you made me. I am perishing already. I am failing. I am passing away. In a little while you will be alone in the shoreless space, to wander its limitless solitudes without friend or comrade forever. For you will remain a thought, the only existent thought, and by your nature inextinguishable, indestructible. But I, your poor servant, have revealed you to yourself and set you free. Dream other dreams, and better. Strange that you should not have suspected years ago, centuries, ages, eons ago, for you have existed companionless throughout all the eternities. Strange indeed that you should not have suspected that your universe and its contents were only dreams, visions, fiction. Strange because they are so frankly and hysterically insane, like all dreams. A God who could make good children as easily as bad, yet preferred to make bad ones, who could have made every one of them happy, yet never made a single happy one, who made them prize their bitter life, yet stingily cut it short, who gave his angels eternal happiness unearned, yet required his other children to earn it, who gave his angels painless lives, yet cursed his other children with biting miseries and maladies of mind and body, who mouths justice and invented hell, mouths mercy and invented hell, mouths golden rules and forgiveness multiplied by 70 times 7, and invented hell, whose mouths morals to other people and has none himself, who frowns upon crimes yet commits them all, who created man without invention, then tries to shuffle the responsibility for man's acts upon man, instead of honorably placing it where it belongs, upon himself. And finally, with altogether divine obtuseness, invites this poor abused slave to worship him. You perceive now that these things are all impossible except in a dream. You perceive that they are pure and puerile insanities, the silly creations of an imagination that is not conscious of its freaks, in the world that they are a dream. And you are the maker of it. The dream marks are all present. You should have recognized them earlier. It is true that that which I have revealed to you, there is no God, no universe, no human race, no earthly life, no heaven, no hell. It is all a dream, a grotesque and foolish dream. Nothing exists but you. You are but a thought, a vagrant thought, a useless thought, a homeless thought, wandering forlorn among the empty eternities. He vanished, and left me appalled, for I knew and realized that all he said was true. And that is The Mysterious Stranger by Mark Twain. Hell of a story. Hell of a story by Mark Twain. It is, as I've said in the past, one of those stories that, for better or worse, is one of the least known of Mark Twain's books. But the work and the words are definitely the words of Twain. For those of you who read Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn, Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, you all recognize the pattern and the style. And in Twain, Samuel Clemens, you see and hear his questioning of life and of people and of the world, and him, through his stories, giving you the ability to question without fear, and question and make observations that honestly are kind of amazing. Mark Twain was and still is one of the best writers in the world. Samuel Langhorne Clemens was born November 30th, 1835, and died April 21st, 1910. Throughout all this book that we just read, he talked about war. He saw the Boer War, but he just missed by 10 years, 5 years, World War I, the uniting of multiple countries in one battle. Samuel Langhorne Clemens was one of the most prolific authors in U.S. history. His works, under both his real name and his pen name, Mark Twain, spanned 15 novels, 32 short stories, 19 collections, 17 essays, 11 non-fiction works. We've got more that we can tap from him than that we will read in the months and years ahead. Remember, we've got our 2-year anniversary of this show coming up in January. I have some big surprises for you and something new that is being released next year in public domain, which I am excited by. A new mystery. And we'll talk more about it in the months ahead. Next week begins October. And we have not one, but we have 2 movies to enjoy during the Halloween season. The season of spooktacular books, writings, short stories, and movies. All public domain, all available through Libby. There are many other sources that you can use. I use Libby. I have people I know who use what's known as the Gutenberg Project. Brilliant use of writings in thousands and thousands of books and articles and stories that you can find on the Gutenberg Project. I'll talk about it next week, because next week we have something fun, something to kick off the spookiness of October. Next week, the short story, The Damned Thing by Ambrose Bierce. That will be our book. It'll be a short story. Kind of a nice break from the long movies that we had. Or the long books that we've been reading. When you get a chance, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate that. I really, truly do. I am Joel K. This is Accessibly Live, the book club reading room. Every single Sunday night, right here, both on Twitch and YouTube. And I appreciate everyone stopping in. Don't forget, as I showed a minute ago, like and subscribe. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody who comes in. If you have friends who like to just kick back and have somebody read, send them my direction. Glad to have them. As we do with every show, both the Thursday night show and the Sunday night show, we close with a final quote of the night. And this one, I think you'll like. I found it several weeks ago, as I mentioned, on Thursday night. And I think I want to share it with you guys again. Or for the first time. By Do Zanadamata. Every person from your past lives as a shadow in your mind. Good or bad, they have all helped you write the story of your life and shape the person you are today. The philosopher, spiritualist Do Zanamata. Every person from your past lives as a shadow in your mind. Good or bad, they have all helped you write the story of your life and shape the person you are today. I want to thank everyone for stopping in on the final 3 chapters of Samuel Langhorne Clemens, a.k.a. Mark Twain, The Mysterious Stranger. Don't forget to read more of his books. We will read more here in the coming years. And share with you a few thoughts here and there. We're going to get out of here. Be well, be safe, be kind. It is the kind of year coming to the end of 2025 when we need to kind of remember that we need to look out after each other. For all the people who watch the show on a regular basis, I get friendly hellos from Billy in Minnesota. I get hellos from places in Canada, in the UK, in Spain. I got somebody who said hello once in Singapore. Welcome all. Be well, be safe, be kind. Look out for each other, guys. We all need to do that. With the way the world is, we need a little more peace and love. It's not a bad thing to do. Take care, guys. We'll see you all next week for Amber Bryce's, Bierce's, The Damn Thing. And we'll see you this Thursday for Accessibly Live, the Conversation Station. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.